Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Chase. So today we're going to look at Bitcoin, Ethereum, and ES. To be honest with you, I haven't made a video in a minute because there hasn't really been too much to talk about, in my opinion. Since the middle of July, we've hardly had any movements of substantial moves, right? Maybe you could see one move, two moves, three moves. But with that said, at the same time, you would have had to predict those movements with there being a week of chop, a week and a half of chop in between every move. So you get a week and a half of chop, you get a move, a week and a half of chop. And frankly, there hasn't been many good setups or anything in there. I think this move was slightly predictable. I had called bullish at 29, it was like 29.4 or something around here, 29.2. And eventually called for TP at 31.50. I personally didn't take the trade, but what I saw, just to show you guys, what I saw was sort of what I call the triple tap. I think a lot of people call it the triple tap, but it's just a low, a sweep of the low, and then you buy the retest of the low, and you would put your stop below the sweep, right? So you would have had a retest there, and then you would have had another test there, and then you played this to the weekly level. Okay, if you just take a weekly chart. And you say, okay, well, weekly candles, this candle, your up candle before the down move, right? And it really hadn't been tested since. You had this candle, and then you just move down. So the first test to this you would expect to be resistance, and it did serve as such. Okay, just give me a little one back there. As far as the other levels I have drawn, really, you could derive it from the weekly. You could say, oh, you had a high here, swept this high. After the high, I usually like to take a low. And then at that point, you could see if your range is valid by sort of seeing is there respect along the equilibrium of your range. And in my opinion here, there was a good amount of respect here that we can see on the equilibrium. So I like drawing this as a bit of a range. That means that I think if price eventually comes down, that 27.1 is where I'm interested in longing, maybe even 27.2, 27.4, all around here. But at the end of the day, I tend to think if this does break down in a major way that we'll probably fully test the 27.1 area, and that's where I'm interested in. Doesn't necessarily mean we're going down there right away. Perhaps we could be, going up to sweep this liquidity. That's possible. See how we react to the 31 area. But to be honest with you guys, I'm not taking any trades within here. Okay. What I would want to see to take trades. Let me take a sip of water. What I would want to see to take trades here is something along these lines. So if I was looking to get short, just a simple breakdown, if we're talking, I want to see displacement below, right? So a big move below. Everyone's super bearish, everyone's giga bearish, everyone's calling 20K, blah, blah, blah. That's when you start looking back towards the equilibrium and all this support here to take a short down to right here about. I would front run the 27.1 a bit. As I said, I'd be looking to take profit around 27.4. But as far as an entry is concerned, I'm more interested in around 27.1. And you may ask why that is. It's just a simple thing, right? I tend to try to be greedy with my entries. I think Salsa once said it. It's likely, lucky entries, likely exits. And I sort of started saying it my own way. It was just, I'm greedy with my entries. And when it comes to my take profits, I'm aggressive with them. I'm looking to get my profits and get out. But when it comes to entries, I'm looking to have an entry be pretty clean. Like I said, greedy with the entry. I want it to really be a good setup, a good trade, a good level, etc., etc. So impulse down. If we see an impulse down, if we see displacement down, meaning like the candle comes down in a major way, it closes down here somewhere, it looks shitty, that's when you look for some type of retest in there and you go, okay? Moving to the, if we were to go to the upside and we swept all this back below the weekly level, that's a possible short right there. You could play that back to just the equilibrium because who knows where it goes from there. Maybe you leave 20% to run. Okay, so that's bearish scenario 1, bearish scenario 2, even though it's locally bullish, but then it turns bearish. As far as full bull, if we were to just break out here and flip this level to support, I need to see not only a support test here and hold, but I need to see, you know, sort of a leg in here is where I look to get long, right, within this area. Because look, a lot of the times, look at this area. So if you played a breakout here and it came back down, you know, if you go to like a lower time frame, like an hourly or something, there might be a retest in there. Look at this one on the daily. So daily closed above. People probably tried to long the retest, and it's just a deviation. It broke down. So the way you save yourself from that, make sure I'm still recording. I am. So the way you save yourself from that is by if it does push above and it does retest, let it take that high. So it would look like this. So if it had gone up here and it retested and it pushes above this high right here, right? If it pushes above that high right there, so that high is right here, right? And if it pushes above that, within this consolidation is where you start looking to get long. And then it goes higher typically, right? But you don't need to fall or immediately bid on the retest when you can typically catch the leg, right? This is typically the shakiest area, right? So price comes up, people are, oh, maybe the retest, oh, maybe not, oh, maybe the retest, you know, maybe it's good, maybe it's not, right? It's shaky in here is my point, it's shaky. But when you get back above this high and you consolidate, it's gonna run, right? That's the area you want to be getting into the trade, okay? So I guess that's ideas for Bitcoin. Moving to Ethereum, I have it drawn out like this. You know, this trend line. I had a different one. That's the thing about trend lines, right? You know, you can sort of just make them up however you want. But this is the one I like right now because it only has 2 taps, or this was your original or your second tap here. Whether it's even valid or not, we'll know if on the 3rd tap. But it correlates very well with this weekly demand area. So, you know, weekly demand, down candle before the up move, right? Weekly. We move down to daily, and we can just see, you can see in here just this consolidation before the move up, right? As I've always said, there's so many ways to, you know, you call them water blocks, you can call it demand, the impulse before the move up, etc., or impulse after the consolidation. Whatever you want to say, but it all adds up to mostly the same shit. You have consolidation in here, you have an impulse move, this is where the big buyer stepped in. If it comes back down into this trend line, I look to play it towards this liquidity, something along those lines. Okay, probably take profit as well here-ish above all of this liquidity right here. That looks a little, you know, sometimes you won't get the full move immediately, and that's why you do partials. So let's say I look at this and I say, well, you know, I like these highs, they're mostly untested right there, and then I think if we're going for these, then we might as well go for these, right? So this isn't a take profit here, this is, so this is TP1, and this is your TP2, and it would look something like this into here, tap the trend line, TP1 right here above all this liquidity, TP2 right here. I smell like burning. Give me a minute. Yeah, I don't know what that was. All right, nonetheless, yeah, so we talked about an upside scenario. Or, you know, yeah, because I'm not really looking to short down to here. This is more of just like an entry point for me, looking entry for long, TP1, TP2. If we do head up above these, like partially, you know, somewhat equal highs here, could look for a short position in here. We'll see how that works out. Again, this is all far off at the moment, but probably the first test of this level should probably be a good short. I'd be interested in that. And that's about it for ETH. Okay, let's move in, just take a quick look at ES. So ES has been, in my opinion, wasn't really choppy this week, but my schedule got a little bit messed up, so I haven't been able to pay attention to it very well. I mean, just some real life stuff got in the way. So yeah, schedule got a little bit messed up. I wasn't online a lot for ES this week, but my chart was really pretty simple at the start of the week. It just had this block laid out here. You know, you can just see it in a simple format, however you want to look at it again, right? Resistance, resistance, move down here, powers through. It's going to flip to support. Look at the daily closes. So support, slightly front run, support, support, support. Finally closed below here. So we'll have to see. At this point, maybe we do a little deviation of this or something, and then if it gets back down below, that's when we probably play it to lower. Oops. Deviation above, back below, play it to lower. Liquidity here, that's your TP1. Liquidity here, TP2, liquidity here, TP3, into this sort of support area right here. Okay. Yeah, just the reason I have it marked out like this, again, it's the same shit, guys, right? It was just, this is where you found resistance. This is where a lot of the sort of the volume took place in here, rather than the wick, right? You know, more the volume takes place in the body typically. So we send us down, and we could see, you know, a slight front run there. So the wick does give you an initial bounce, and then the body gives you a bounce as well. And you know, all pretty decent high time frame moves in here, I would say. Low time frame, this stuff isn't really my cup of tea. This was the level that broke us down. Perfect tap there. We can see support, 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 retest, resistance. Doesn't get any better, right? And you know, again, I'll show you more techniques. So you know, if you're using the fair value gap, there you go. You would just short the equilibrium, and you would have your stop above the candle that formed the gap. You know, simple short support and resistance. You have support here, resistance here. Perfect tap. Support and resistance actually would have been the more accurate quote-unquote method here. But just to show you guys once again, you know, a lot of this stuff, if your levels are good, your levels are good. It's something I'm always going to say. If your levels are good, your levels are good. And, you know, I think I've gotten my levels very good over the years. Now it's mostly just down to execution. Yeah, and that's it for me, really. I've been trying to, you know, improve my execution as much as possible. A lot of journaling my trades and whatnot. But as I said, this between crypto being so lackluster and just my schedule getting messed up from some real life shit, you know, this week was just not a big trading week for me. But yeah, you know, we'll see how this pans out. You know, there's definitely some targets to look at if we do start moving down. You can see sort of like these built up lows here. But yeah, we'll give it some time. As far as Bitcoin and Ethereum goes, as I said, you know, you really need to see some type of an impulse, and you need to see a clean move or two play out. You need to see some continuation before you can trust here. Saw a lot of people longing Bitcoin after it failed to show like that it wanted to continue moving, right? So if Bitcoin wanted to continue pushing up, what it would have did was it would have bounced off this 29.6, this 1 hour fair value gap. It comes up, it tests the weekly resistance, bounces off the 1 hour fair value, rejects, loses it, tests the 1 hour back into the chop. It's really that simple. You could see the support of the level the whole way through, or the confluence of the level, right? Like, look, it served this support perfectly, and then it flips to resistance. You know, if you're just using the equilibrium of it, rejects it, and back into the chop, in my opinion. So nothing that interesting here. We really need to see the market provide a move, and then not only one move, but a continuation move, as I showed you guys. If it comes up into here, if it flips this, I need to see it get back above the high, right? If we were using this as an example, consolidate, and then that's where I look to take my chance on that consolidation, thinking it's going to go higher. Same thing to the downside. I need it to break down in a major way. If it does break down in a major way, any retest into this area should be a potential short, and if not, then this is actually not the same, because then you can actually get chopped up. It could just be a major stop run. It could reclaim, and it could go back into the chop. Sort of nightmare scenario there. The way we'd really want to look for this then is it has to be a breakdown, right? So it has to be a strong breakdown. And what you're going to want to see is you're going to want to see the very lows of this serve as resistance basically immediately. You don't want to see like, oh yeah, well maybe it'll get to this resistance. Oh, it's getting to this. No, you're back into the chop, right? It's the same as on this side, how I was saying 29.6 needed to hold, or we were going to get back into the chop. Like an aggressive level needed to hold. It's the same way on the downside. An aggressive level needs to hold. So if we're going to break down an impulse, an aggressive support needs to turn into resistance to continue moving down. And that's how I'll look for it. And if there was a short opportunity and it did just, get all the way back to the EQ or something, if it dropped down, it's back in here, that's a cut, that's a chop. No good anymore. Okay. Outside of that, yeah, crypto's been boring, guys. Hopefully it picks up. I guess it's summer. People are just not at the, markets as much. Not much else to say. Okay, hope you all have been well. I'll try to get another video out in a couple days. Try to get a little bit more active again, see if there's anything to discuss. Okay, have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you guys soon.